All right. Lots of healings for everybody in the world today. So thank you to the source of creation for being this live webinar, for being our healing circle, for being the manifestation of consciousness in forms which heal, in forms which promote the flow or expansion of consciousness. So thank you for being's intention to continue its own expansion, to continue expanding through its own internal dynamics. In honor of the physiology, thank you to everyone's ancestors. Thank you for the role of the ancestors. For their loving support. May we work concisely and efficiently. May we be, as a collective, the highest common denominator of our collective. May that prevail. And may we do the healing work today, which the world needs most at this time, which each of us as individuals need most at this time. Thank you. Thank you to the Holy Tradition. All right. So energy healing, what is it? Energy healing is using, this is a means of applying our attention, our perception, our awareness. Oh, we've actually got a point here before I get into that. Just a point for anybody who wants to do stuff, ask questions and stuff. Evidently the Zoom buttons are at the bottom of the windows. Could be they upgraded their technology since the last time I was doing this. And I'm also going to close my list of panelists because I know you guys are here. All right. So energy healing. What is energy healing? Energy healing is the ability to focus attention intelligently. We want to get attention into the parts of the physiology. Particularly, we want to go into the seed or the cause. We want to go into the nut of that little original point where an imbalance began, and we want to take out the imbalance. We want to restructure whatever is there at that seed level of the physiology. We want to restructure it, align it with Dharma, in such a way that that initiating impulse that gave rise to some problem, imbalance, weakness in the system is eliminated from its source. Consciousness can do that. Consciousness can do that. And sometimes medicines can do that, because sometimes we're taking something like different types of herbs or different types of foods which have, or even pharmaceuticals can do it, because the pharmaceuticals are derived from the herbs, from the different substances of the earth. Those substances have consciousness in them. They have the frequency or the quality of consciousness, which is the antidote or counteracts the imbalance. So what we're doing with energy healing is we're bringing that whole system down to an even more specified condition in the self, where we're bypassing the herbs and the medicines and all that stuff, and we're going right to the consciousness. Because if the consciousness resides in the plant, then through our own collective levels of self, we can access that consciousness. And from there, we can extract that quality of consciousness directly, which is the antidote to the imbalance, and apply it to the seed of the imbalance. And the reason this is useful is that physical materials address the physicalness of the illness, and of course the consciousness in the herbs, that addresses the consciousness, our consciousness, but consciousness can affect consciousness directly, and it can move into very fine levels. It can really, with awareness or attention, we can go right in and we can get right into that very delicate level of self where the seed sprouts, whatever causes that imbalance in the first place. And sometimes the cause has resided in the system for a really long time. It could be something that has been carried for multiple lifetimes, or it could be something that came into the body when we were very small and we don't even have memories back to being a toddler or an infant or something. So all the way down to the source, all the way down to the source. We're looking at the cause of the imbalance, and then, addressing it with consciousness, which is able to move down to that source. All the way in. Anyway, so this is what energy healing is. We're using consciousness as the medicine, basically. So to do that, in what I've done is I've created some context in which to navigate the ocean of consciousness and different ways of forming consciousness, of, we could say, angles of approach or angles of perception, which allow consciousness to take specific forms which are antidotes. So consciousness, for example, can flow as just pure, innocent, purest, most quality-less being. It can flow as quality-less being into anything. And as such, it can take on whatever form is needed. But sometimes, even though that's great, sometimes it's not super stable. That quality-less being, it flows in, it flows out. So something gets balanced, but then the being flows out again, and then maybe some old memories or impressions or something come back in. So sometimes consciousness needs to create a form that's more stable, like a matrix. And matrices are comprised of the threads of consciousness, or the streams of consciousness that reside in every corner of creation. And we put them together like sacred geometrical forms, where each form, everywhere there's a node, everywhere there's a knuckle, there is an energy quality. There's a feature. We talked about energy signatures yesterday. There's a specific energy flavor of consciousness there that works together with the other parts of that structure to create something beautiful, something healing. They're matrices. I actually did I think I did a blog on that 2 newsletters ago. So you can look, and I listed a lot of different types of matrices in there. All right. So we have consciousness as a tool. Think of that also as awareness, because we focus awareness. Everybody can focus awareness. It's effortless to focus awareness. So we focus awareness through the ocean, through the field of consciousness itself, to identify that seed of the illness. And then addressing the seed, just the flow of awareness alone brings being. It brings pure consciousness. It brings pure intelligence or pure awareness to that seed. And as that happens, whatever is incomplete in that area is brought back to wholeness. So just the flow of attention itself. And yesterday we started out our session with a discussion about navigating the physiology and focusing awareness, practicing scanning through the physiology with awareness and getting used to feeling both. This is an addition to yesterday. I was thinking of this morning. We want to get used to both focusing the awareness very, very finely. So you can go right in and you can find some teeny tiny little area of the brain, or you can find some teeny little area in the DNA of a cell somewhere that maybe got corrupted, right? So it's one direction of focusing awareness in the body when we're doing scanning through the body, is focusing down to a very tiny dimension. The other way, of course, is to let awareness focus out to the larger dimensions of self, the areas or the dimensions of self that are outside the physiology, like the astral body, which tends to be kind of around the body, like a big apple-y shape around the body. And it can expand. Or in this case, in the case of the webinar, one of the things we're doing is we're awareness on our own situation self, but we're also connected up with the collective of our webinar. And so awareness can expand to the collective of the webinar, and we can experience, I am that collective of our healing circle, our healing collective. If you want, you don't have to do anything. You can just be happy, just enjoy. All right. So that actually ties into these first 2 questions. So, and I did, like I said earlier, I put the questions together in groupings because there's so many of them that came in. So hopefully I can answer several at once. So I'm going to actually read off 2 questions. So one is, she's wondering if it's necessary to perceive, this is from Europe, Austria, if it's necessary to perceive the different levels from the finest abstract level to the concrete physical level, with the 4 dense and the 4 subtle bodies in order to be a successful energy healer. And she's saying when she's in a very pure environment, like out in nature or deep in her meditation or in groups of people meditating, that her mind's very clear and emotions are very balanced. But then sometimes she's in environments that are not so pure. They're very dense surroundings or disturbing influences. And we've got people, you know, who are like around wildfires right now. And she put something in here, WLAN, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that's a misprint. Mobile phones, like EMFs, you know, there are different kinds of influences in our, like in a city or in an apartment house where, you know, you can sit in your apartment and meditate, but who knows what the guy in the next apartment's doing actually. So yeah, or the people. So to become a good energy healer, how do we do that? Oh, Wi-Fi local area network. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's probably it. Like when the area is just full of that. And I know I've got folks on this, in this meeting who live in houses that are very, very close to like really, really big power centers, you know, those great big power lines and stuff. So for everybody. And then I want to also combine with this other question. Can you describe what you see, hear, and feel? Because she's asking, like, is it necessary to see all these levels of consciousness? And can you describe what you see, hear, and feel during a healing? And she's saying, can you describe it so it's easier for us to recognize and experience it? Like, for example, when you work with the 8 levels of the physiology, and how do you know that you're seeing the causal level instead of, say, the astral level? Like, what's the difference? And how do you receive downloads? And how do you work with, this is kind of a long question, how do you work with ancestors and the different forms like Narasimha and the Nagas and Mother Divine, the Center Sun, and the presiding intelligence of Earth? And we're actually going to go into that because one of our categories today are healings for the Earth. And what do you experience when you begin looking at a disease or symptom and then follow it back to its source? And what do you experience when a healing spreads to millions of people around the globe? So that's a broad question. Thank you. So thank you for both those questions. So first of all, energy healing can be done even if there's a feeling of, oh, I don't have any refined perception at all, because one can use the intelligence of the physiology, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is a big filter, right? So what that means is if the body is filtering out certain stuff that it feels is not necessary for awareness to focus at that time, then it means that the physiology is aware of all those bits and pieces of information which we are not aware of which we are not aware. So I know. So what that means is that even if a person thinks, well, I'm not sure I see all those layers of the physiology, it doesn't mean that you're not aware of those layers of the physiology. They're still there. One of the exercises that I gave recently was to put the hands over the heart area and feel what's going on in the heart center area of the body, because the heart center is your center of truth. And it's also as such, it connects us also to the finest level of feeling, which is the causal level of the body. So when I experience the causal level of the physiology, I'm experiencing a very abstract level of consciousness, which flows in waves of feeling and experience, perception and experience. Oh yeah, he's beautiful point from Ogden saying that even a sick doctor, this is from the Vedas, even a sick doctor can write a prescription to make someone well. So in order to do energy healing, for instance, one of my greatest allies in this process was my friend Nick, who you've heard me refer to. Well, Nick never saw anything. He did not have any refined perception. He just came to me and said, oh, I understand how energy healing works, and I can explain to you how to do it, and you can combine your ability to see with all these principles and these words. You know, he gave me this whole lexicon, my beginning of the lexicon that I use came from him to describe the different details. So we started there, and he was able to help people a lot. He helped me. So it's not necessary to clearly see a separation of this is the astral body and this is the mental body. And the reason is that consciousness is actually a continuum from the unmanifest levels of being all the way up to the manifest levels. It's a continuum. So what that means is there aren't really necessarily absolute boundaries between the layers of consciousness. I happen to identify them the way I identify them. It's somewhat arbitrary. As as we know, Ayurveda describes 5 koshas, or sheaths of the body, which also correlate with layers from subtle to dense. So 5 koshas in Ayurveda. I think there are 33 levels in Buddhism. I've got 8 levels going on here, and I'm doing that because for some reason it was easy for me. And also with my buddy Nick, we kind of started out with a model, and it changed over time. It became more refined and more precise. But it's all quite organic. So don't feel that you're not experiencing just because you don't clearly experience a distinction between one level and another. I mean, it's pretty obvious that where the physiology begins and ends, right? How big are we? How big are you? I'm this tall, but so we can say, well, yeah, there's the physicality of the body, and then there's like the energy fields of the body. So there's a pretty clear distinction there, but maybe not so much, because the etheric body, which is the next layer down from the physical, it feels pain and pleasure and heat and cold and it harbors emotions just like the different organs in the body and all sorts of stuff. So sometimes we have some discomfort, physical discomfort in the body, and think, oh, well, that's a physical pain. And it may not even be a physical pain. It could be an etheric pain. In fact, a lot of times it is. The pain penetrates through the various levels of the physiology. And if you follow the pain, back even further, it comes down to what was a physical, first experience as a physical pain begins to be experienced as an emotional pain. And it's like, in that area, there's a transition, but really the physical pain almost always has an emotional correlate. And if awareness follows the physical pain back to its deeper level, it's also a continuum. All right, so how do we identify if there's a physical pain on the surface? One of the first things I do is I use inference. And I referred to this yesterday, how years ago I was leaning sometimes on Louise Hay's book. She has this cute little book that she wrote back in the day, back in the 80s, I think, possibly. And it has a listing of all the parts of the body, and it has a listing of all the different illnesses and diseases. And from there, she describes the emotional correlate to the various parts of the body and to the various illnesses. And it's a brilliant little book. So I often use inference first. And you'll find that I've got a knowledge base on my website, and in there, it's of course a work in progress, so it's still growing. And if you want to see something, please send me an email and say, can you please describe what the consciousness correlate is to, and then fill in the blank, whatever you want. But there are entries on a lot of parts of the body there. Our group, very sophisticated. Download for everyone of all the information of the consciousness correlate for all the parts of the body. So that's being received now in our Healing Collective. Nice job, guys. It's coming in, what I'm seeing is it's coming in like a flow of a wisdom flow, coming in from the the soul of creation, from the source of creation, divine being, into the core of our healing collective. And as I've mentioned in previous webinars, we're all equidistant from the core of our healing collective. There's a kind of a central energy hub, you could say, that's the culmination of the collective. It's the sum of all the brilliance of everyone who's here together in this healing circle. So from there, each person receives that information, and I'm seeing it coming into the navel. That's where the information wants to enter the body. It's body wisdom, and it looks to me not that it's new information, but what it's really doing is it's awakening the memory and the wisdom that's already present in the body. The body already knows what each of its parts is good for, and what they represent, and what their relationship is with divine being, and with the human dharma of being the instrument for the expansion of consciousness. Because ultimately that's the connection between every part of the body and being, is that's what we are. We're vessels for the expansion of consciousness. So that information, and it's interesting because as the various parts of the body are remembering, and they're reactivating the connection with divinity, it's causing, I'm seeing a kind of inflood or an influx of energy into the body, vital energy. Because when the connection's very clear, oh, I'm here to be the representative of divinity in this way, and in this way, this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, then that connection, it opens up the channels of energy flow between individuality and universality. And of course, the source of creation is an infinite field of resource, infinite energy, creativity, intelligence. So as the recognition awakens, the discernment, we did a big healing yesterday for discernment. As a discernment awakens in the various parts of the body, the blockages to the flow of divine source are dissolved. The body receives a big influx of nourishment, you could say, knowingness, from the source of creation. Beautiful. Good. Good. Ever accessible. Ever accessible. The other thing that I'm seeing happening in our group is that as that happens, a matrix is stabilizing it, so that that relationship with divinity from all the different parts of the body and all their different dharmas, you can say each part of the body has its own specific dharma, that those are stabilizing. There's some, at the astral level of physiology, those cords are taking on a nice orderly structure within the body to ensure that that connection with divinity is not lost. I'm just enjoying seeing that. I'm enjoying seeing that. I'm enjoying feeling it in my own physiology and all the upgrades that are taking place in the body. Thank you. Thank you. Lots of nice strengthening for all the supportive structures in the body, particularly, because that's what this healing ultimately is about, is promoting stabilization so that we can uphold our role in the universe and in creation. All right, so let me just make sure I didn't leave anything out from these two questions. So sometimes the environment is really supportive, sometimes the environment not so supportive. So the deal is that whatever we attempt to do, wherever we focus up, and this is, I was looking at this yesterday, over the last few days, this has been like the issue that's on the surface for me for the last couple of days, has been that the speed with which the evolutionary process is occurring is accelerating. And as such, it's stirring up both the intentions and the resources to progress forward. And it's also stirring up resistances in the environment. And the resistances create a condition by which the forward progress, which is inevitable, which you cannot avoid evolving, that as it stirs that up, it's also strengthening. Because nature's like, oh, you're moving in this direction. Well, good. Let me just throw a few blockages in your way and see how you jump over those. Because if I'm going to go that way anyway, and that's inevitable, and that's set, that's kind of like determined, right? Then if there's a blockage there, sure as anything, if I have to jump it, it's going to make me stronger. And that, what it does is it's like adding an enhancement to the evolutionary process. So, but we were just talking about this before today's webinar began, and the point is that the relative field of creation doesn't move or evolve as quickly as the subtle level of creation. So what happens is the evolution is taking place on the level of consciousness inside. So it's like, whoa, okay, here we go, next level of the evolutionary trajectory, woo! And then the surface is like, yeah, but you know, I take a little longer, and I've got these old blocks that are left over from past lifetimes, or from my ancestors, or from my belief systems, or whatever. And so those take a little longer to work out. So those are what we see. They appear as those little blockages. But the evolution is inevitable. It is inevitable. It cannot be avoided. So the evolution is going to happen no matter what. And so those blockages, they're going to go no matter what. They are going to be eliminated no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. All right. I'm just double checking this one that had all the many questions rolled into one. How do you know that you're seeing the causal level instead of the astral level? How do you know? I know because the causal level is abstract and I don't see the threads. And when I'm looking at the astral level, I'll get a flash on the threads. They'll just sort of flash into my awareness, or the mist, which tells me I'm in that space between causal and astral. Or if I'm at the astral level and I start seeing what looks like colors in the threads, lots of colors in the threads, and I know we're transitioning up into the emotional level of the physiology, because between emotional and astral we get the auric field, where the emotions start to transmute into colors and then they become the threads of consciousness. So that's part of that transition point between the 4 denser levels of the physiology and the 4 subtler levels of the physiology. Yes?
Could the causal level be what's referred to as from where speech returns, speech cannot enter? From where speech returns. It seems like it's beyond speech.
Yes.
Sounds.
Yes, it is. It is. And I'd say, so the question is, could the causal level be the area where speech returns to that's beyond speech, that level beyond speech? And I'd say absolutely yes. And I'd also say that the astral level, although the speech does, not everyone sees, some are feelers or hearers, says a man who also works with people a lot in the awakening process. And it's the feeling level beyond speech, the causal level is. And yeah, everybody processes the information differently. But I would say, for my friend who mentioned about people feeling and hearing, that has more to do with how they process the experience, that there's that level that's just pure experience, right? It's our pure experience level. And then I use the word see a lot, but I don't actually see, like as in eyeball see. I actually kind of know it. I kind of experience it, basically. And then I interpret it through my words in terms of the 5 senses of which we are all cognized. Thank you. Yes, I cognize it. But then I interpret it through human speech in the words that we're familiar with, because we're familiar with dealing with sight and hearing and all that. Yeah, you're beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I still don't feel like I've done full justice to this question that was really comprehensive, but hopefully I will continue touching on it as we're going along. Okay, so I promised yesterday we'd talk about the pineal gland, and that actually does also interface with this part of today's webinar, where we're kind of talking about how do we do energy healing? Like, what are these mechanics? So there's like 2 or 3 questions here on the pineal gland. This one is in 2 parts. Do you have a healing for the calcified pineal gland? And do you recommend taking supplements such as skate liver oil to decalcify the pineal gland? And do you advise sun gazing? And does this heal the pineal gland? And then here's another one. Does the mother of creation agree that decalcification of the pineal gland or something similar would be hugely beneficial for us to embody and express our greatest human potential? And if so, with the potent power of our collective, can we please co-create a healing which will gracefully facilitate that process? So thank you both for these questions. And I saved for today because I'm like, oh, I know that one came in from Europe, but then I realized the other one, she reminded me she was from Australia, so she was in last night. But anyway, we'll go ahead and do them because it's important. First of all, just a tiny bit of background. I'm not a scientist, so I don't have all the super duper details on the pineal gland calcification, but I do know that at this point, the calcification in the pineal gland as measured by modern scientists is comprised mostly of fluoride and chlorine. Fluoride and chlorine. Yeah, fluoride and chlorine. So, of course, avoiding those substances would be good. So from the first question, which is, practical recommendations, avoiding fluoride and chlorine is good. And be careful because fluoride and chlorine are not just in water. Of course, purifying water is good. Not using fluorinated toothpaste, even though your dentist will probably tell you it's the best thing ever. But some foods also. Baking soda evidently has some in there, and I think there are others. So eating unprocessed foods, natural, organic, whole foods is always best. And that's going to avoid the building up of those toxins in the body in the first place. Another thing is that those particular elements are in the same family as another element, iodine. And iodine is very, very good for the body, right? There's a fourth one too. It starts with a B. Bromine, thank you. So there are four. There's fluoride, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. And they tend to occupy the same spaces in the body. But iodine has a much more beneficial effect in the body. So increasing iodine consumption is actually beneficial to kind of move out. It kind of comes in and takes the place for the fluoride and the chlorine. Also, the pineal gland is a little bit like an eyeball. But it's deep inside the brain. It's a little pocket or ball that's got rod and cone cells around it, and it's got water inside it. And it holds different minerals. And it's the job of the pineal gland to be a repository for some healthy minerals in the body. So it's natural for it to have minerals, which may be one reason why people's pineal glands do tend to attract these different fluoride and chlorine. The other thing is that the pineal gland is outside the blood-brain barrier. And so it's not protected like the inner components of the brain. So because of that, we do need to protect through diet. Yes, I feel that all sorts of herbs, and I looked online, there are plenty of people online who offer great suggestions for purifying and decalcifying the pineal gland. Yes, definitely sun gazing helps. Because sun gazing, the rays of the sun run the spectrum of light. And all these spectrums of light are extremely healing for the physiology. So yes, I definitely recommend sun gazing, always being very careful and discerning, very discriminating. We want to only look at the sun when it's within 15 degrees of the horizon, preferably the morning sun, which is cooler and softer and cleaner and fresher and brings a lot more energy to the body. And then only for a few seconds, until some people look daily at the rising sun, and then they're able to build up resistance to the intense qualities of it, so they can look a little bit more. But if you're not doing it every day, I suggest you take it easy and just go for about 10 seconds to be on the safe side. Okay, so lots of people have great material out there on the internet. Some other herbs that I looked at, turmeric is considered great. Haritaki is considered great. A lot of people recommend taking magnesium orally or putting it on the skin. Onions were even suggested in one video, but what we're doing in energy healing is using consciousness to heal. So we can do something that's an augmentation to any sort of dense material structures that we can take into our body orally or on the skin. So let's just do that. We're going to put attention on the pineal gland for a minute, that little eye that's in the middle of the brain area, deep inside the brain. And the first thing I'm feeling, so starting at the finest level of feeling, is a sense of complete adoration for that part of the physiology. So very rarely do we isolate out a particular organ or part of the body and then send gratitude, loving gratitude. Oh, there's a mantra. There's a mantra for it, says Michael. The mantra is Aditya Hridayam, brings light into the bodies. Aditya Hridayam. Just in case anybody was wondering about that, thank you.
That's like a 2-page thing. Aditya Hridayam. It comes from, I think, Ramayana.
So it says here that he's saying it comes from the Rig Veda, but you're saying from the Ramayana. The Ramayana is a 2-page essay.
It's like something you chant. You know, it's like a.
You chat?
Chant.
Chant. It's something you chant, and it's not just those words, Aditya Hridayam. It's like a whole section. It's a whole section of the Veda. Beautiful, beautiful. It brings light into the bodies. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yes, the Ramayana, the description of how it works is from the Rik, and then it actually comes from the Ramayana. Beautiful. Yeah, upstairs. All right. So, thank you so much for that. We'll have to check it out. In fact, it's probably on YouTube. You can just go and click on it, and the priests or the pundits can just chant it for you. You can have it running in the background there and just enjoy that and bring light into the bodies. From the level of consciousness itself, what we're really doing is that, only doing it just directly from consciousness to consciousness. So, as I mentioned before, the first feeling that arose was this feeling of like, oh, my beautiful one, my sweet little pineal gland, he's so precious. The waters of the body purifying. And waters, as we know, and this actually ties into a later question because I had people asking questions about waters of the earth. But the waters of the body are highly responsive to our emotional state. And this really ties into this point that I was just mentioning earlier, which is we're in this place where we literally have to enhance our own ability to maintain an accelerated pace of evolution. Otherwise, the natural trajectory of evolution, which is accelerating, will leave us in the dust. And in order to do that, because inevitably, as the evolution is going on, some dirt gets stirred up, stuff gets stirred up, some elements of not happy schmappy get stirred up from the environment. And it's absolutely necessary to realign the priorities of awareness or attention with the evolutionary process, not so much getting too caught on the boundaries. I know in these energy healings, we spend plenty of time going into, okay, there's some karma here in the causal body and we're gonna unwind it. And so we get all, we get kind of absorbed into the details of the healing process. But really, really, really the overall orientation of self is on the purity. It's on dharma. It's on sattva. It's on the highest levels of absolute pure consciousness, Satchit Ananda, on those highest levels, absolute bliss consciousness that dominates or predominates. whatever the experience is that's going down. And that way it's possible to witness. And this ties into the last thing too, is like, how do we do this? It allows one to witness the healing process without being gripped. Is that we have to remember that the beauty or the best parts of the moment are almost always going to be subtler and less expressed than the challenging parts. So the challenging parts are going to be the surface, but the good, the yummy stuff, the stuff that we're aiming for is all inside. So we have to let the focus of awareness recognize and honor that inner reality. And of course, pineal gland is like that, right? We've got these eyes that see all sorts of, I see all the dust when I go around my house, right? I see that dust. But the inner eye sees the sweetness. Like in my upstairs hall, I was looking, I thought, there's dust in my upstairs hall, you know? But then there's that same space that's got the dust. It's this lovely little nook with a little stained glass window and beautiful hardwood floors and a lovely mahogany banister that goes up to the next level. And I realized that holds the potential for that area to be dust-free. So that's the underlying. When I see the dust, it's only because it could be dust-free. And in its dust-free state, it radiates or resonates the divinity of the highest heavens, you know, and it becomes a glorious spot that's just a pleasure to be even to walk past it. So the pineal gland, for all of us, and I'm looking out into our collective and I'm seeing everybody's pineal glands. We're looking, we have different degrees of, Wikipedia describes it as brain sand. They actually use that word, brain sand, in Wikipedia to describe those hard calcifications that can get into the pineal gland. Everyone with different varying degrees, but everyone, thank you, but everyone also has a certain amount of their pineal gland that's in lovely, beautiful, fresh, clean, wholesome condition. So we want to use the waters that are in that part of the pineal gland and infuse those waters with the light of being and with the softest, sweetest, motherly impulse, because it's mother who nourishes and protects and purifies. We want those three, right? We want nourishment, protection, and purification for the pineal gland. So that's that pure, luscious, sumptuous energy that sits in the gap between being asleep and being awake in its own nature, but not manifest yet, not yet manifest. And as that energy, which is a very potent, very pure energy of consciousness or divinity, starts to move up into the causal level of the physiology, where we start to implement the healing process, it takes on forms of mother. And forms very loving, very tender, very compassionate, very discerning. What does the mother do? The mother's more aware of the child than anybody else. You know, the child goes to the preschool and the teachers, they have awareness of all the children of the preschool, but the mother knows that child's details, right? So it's that level of discernment going in there. And this ties in beautifully to the healing we did yesterday, where the discernment was going back and forth between the prefrontal cortex and the occipital cortex, and it was hitting a point of silence right in the middle. So that beautiful connection to silence, and that, I would say, is probably one of the most glorious features of the pineal gland, is that it is able to translate the pure light of divine being into a form that we can comprehend and understand intellectually, or at least experientially, by the production of dimethyltryptamine, which is one of the materials that the pineal gland produces that gives rise to pictures or visions or sensations or feelings or sounds or insights, the inner dialogue, the inner story that's going on. And it takes experiences of pure, unmanifest, quality-less divine being and it translates into forms that make sense to us. Ah, the ocean. Ah, the ocean. Or oh, space. The waters of the earth, the space, the elements a lot of times. Beautiful. So that energy, that light, that quality of, so awareness going into the pineal gland. And if you did your little practice last night of scanning the body and getting good at focusing in on a particular spot, you can find the pineal gland, and then awareness coming into the pineal gland with that simple intention to fold back into the source of creation. So pineal gland, source of creation. Pineal gland, source of creation. In whatever speed and whatever rate you like, what it's doing is it's bringing that beautiful, sumptuous, luscious, precious quality that purifies, nourishes, and activates or enlivens the pineal gland. Integrate. It integrates. Right there, integration occurring in the pineal gland. For everyone watching this webinar, everybody watching it as a webinar, everyone watching it as an excerpt, is also the pineal gland feeling better, is then able to talk to the heart, and is able to give the heart some directions on how to produce that impulse in an even more refined, more precise manner that the pineal gland likes better. So now there's a little communication going back and forth between the heart and the pineal gland. And the heart's wisdom awakening to be able to work in a way which is very, I would say a lot like hot anger, like cold anger. It's using energies which are particularly for the decalcification process, right? Because something has to be destroyed in order for the calcification to leave the pineal gland. So there's this element of using the anger as a means of destruction to go in and dissolve that fluoride and chlorine out of the pineal gland. Just watching it happen, feeling it happening inside my own body. And I'm feeling, if anybody's feeling a little bit of an increase of mucus, that is an indication that this is happening, because that's how these tissues of the body let go of toxins and impurities. They come out as mucus. So if you're feeling that, that's good. You're doing it right. And if you're not, it's okay too. You're still doing it. Where everybody's having that. Thank you for the amazing, amazing questions. Beautiful questions. Okay, now look, I've got all these papers here. Oh boy. And then I've also got 8 questions coming in up here. Oh boy. So I want to get to everybody's questions. Okay. Okay, so here's a question. Wondering about astrology birth charts. Okay, and the next one's on the pineal gland. So we did that. Yay, that question's covered. Tom, my sweetheart, who does my technology, some of the questions are getting clipped up here. Not all of them, but I can't answer the questions that I can't read. So yeah, about the astrology charts and the birth charts, I would say there we are interfacing with the question on the collective. And I think that might be my next, yeah, this is my next layer of questions coming up, because what we're really looking at there is how these great massive bodies that have so much magnetic pull are influencing our energy bodies, right? So here are our little human form here on Earth, and we have our little magnetic energy field around us. And then there are these just massive forms out in the collective, out in the cosmic field around the Earth that have a very distinct effect on us. Just the moon alone, everybody knows, you know, and the moon goes through its 28-day cycle. People feel it. People feel that. The full moon, we feel it. So the position of the planets at the time of birth tends to give an overall picture of the basic karma that we come into this life. And dharma. It includes karma and dharma. And it's important to know that because the planets are also physical material bodies, that anything physical material can be transcended with consciousness. So even if the chart says, oh, you know, you're like my chart, someone read my chart one time and they said, well, you know, you have this Kuja dosha in your 7th house. That means death of husband, death of spouse. Well, it turns out that I just happened to find a spouse who also had Kuja dosha and who also had, there were actually 2 planets and 4 houses that were involved in the way our 2 charts interacted, and they canceled each other out. So that's actually good for the life of my spouse. So something, you see what I'm saying, is that any kind of karma that we come in with, there's a pretty wide range of modification that can be put on karma. And karma reminds me a little bit of anger, that once the arrow is pulled on the bow, once the bow has been drawn, that anger does tend to have a destructive effect. But the range between whether the anger is going to come in and just obliterate everything in its path, or whether it's going to come in like a surgeon's knife and actually save lives, that is up to you. That is a choice that you have. So one of the things that we're doing in this energy healing, as we're doing this together, and we're learning so much more. I'm learning in these sessions too. Just saying, because you guys are brilliant and your consciousness, our consciousness together as a collective is so big and it's so powerful that it provides a platform for my deeper understanding as well. So as a collective, we're expanding, we're fulfilling our cosmic dharma, expansion of knowledge. So in there, I feel as if a lot of the features in the chart, which may be like negative features, actually could be interpreted as negative or something, actually have the potential to be modified greatly with the way we handle them. And it's good to know the chart, right? Because if you know something's there, like I knew this Kuja dosha was there, I was like, oh, that's why I kept losing boyfriends. Oh. So, you know, maybe I shouldn't date for a while until I figure out what I'm doing. So that's exactly what I did. I quit. Anyway, yeah, so knowing is good. Knowing is good. It puts you in a position of power and understanding, and that's what we're doing. We're expanding knowingness. So thank you for that question. Beautiful about the birth charts. Moving into, and we did address the pineal gland. Is there an antidote to get rid of all fear? I think that fear hijacks her actions and a sense of balance. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's look at that, and let's actually tie that into these next, I think there are 3 questions here, actually 4 questions, which have a kind of a collective element to them. And this one that I referenced last night and I said I was going to look at today, and I'm really happy to do that. And this woman is saying that we've done a lot of healings in these energy healing sessions for people and individuals, ancestors, human collective, even for Mother Earth. We've done lots of healings for Mother Earth. But she didn't know that if we had actually ever done a healing for the approximately 7 billion non-wildlife animals who live in captivity for food production purposes. Yeah, so many, right? So many. And then she gives reference to a movie on YouTube, if anybody wants to go see how painful that is. Land of Hope and Glory by Earthing Ed. Land of Hope and Glory by Earthing Ed, if you want to check that out. And it shows a lot of direct footage. And I'll tell you, I know who took that footage because I have a nephew who works in the animal protection, a nonprofit animal protection agency, one of the biggest ones in America. And they actually send like spies into CAFOs with body cameras, and they take sneaky pictures inside of those houses where they kill the animals and cut them up and stuff like that. Yeah, so that footage is, people are out there collecting that footage. Anyway, yeah, so that's good. And then there's another question here about the waters of the earth. And we know that the waters, they carry a lot of feelings in them. And that I thought this was a really interesting point at the end, where she points out that that some from some sources, I'm not sure where the source is, but that some people in the esoteric world say that whales ground the light of divinity to the earth. And in its deepest parts of the ocean, the whales are very grounding forces in the ocean. And they're being killed off, of course, at a huge rate. And it seems that the oceans are dying or in a state of imbalance, and how can we help them? So with regards to the lady's question on fear, coming back to kind of tying it back together now, is that whatever we feel individually in our physiologies, we're also on this earth in the soup of the experience that's going on all over the earth. And I think someone asked a question yesterday about what stops us from evolving. And the thing is, how can we actually move forward? Like, how can we as a collective here move forward when the collective of humanity is causing so much suffering in our world? So I've looked at that situation with the animals, and I've noticed that it goes back in time. Right now, there's 770 billion, but if we look back through the history of humanity, it's an awful lot more. Because those 70 billion are just this season's crop. Last season was another 70 billion, and the season before that. So it's fear, anger, trauma, pain, sitting in the collective consciousness, and it hasn't so much been on our radar, so we haven't been dealing with it that much. But I feel as if this question, is there an antidote to get rid of all fear? If we're going to find an antidote, perhaps it would be good to offer that antidote to all the oceans and to all the animals in captivity, as well as people. I know it's a very big, serious topic, but that's why we did the thing of establishing wholeness first, that the evolutionary process is inevitable first. And as a collective, we can do this. We're strong. This is the first time we're really using our healing collective. We're using it in a very big way. So we're going to boldly look into, like my nephew and his company boldly go in. These are usually vegans who go into these places too, you know, going into the field of fear that's sitting like a cloud around our earth, in the hearts and the bodies and perception and experience of all these beings. Validation, a fly just came. He's like, yeah, on behalf of all the animals. First fly I've seen today, man. Anyway, just timing perfect. So what it's doing, I feel, is it's reaching deep, deep, deep. The intention to look into that fear, that huge ocean of fear, is causing a deep, deep anchoring in our hearts. That's what I'm feeling. This just incredible level of inner strength and capacity to embody divinity in the heart area. And all through our months and years of doing these webinars, all through the healings I've been doing for ages, it seems like we tend to circle back to the heart because it's so fundamental. But boy, this time we're circling back in a way we've never circled before. In the heart, this just tremendous, tremendous potential, depth, profoundness of capability to produce an impulse of purest expression of being's ability to manifest the impulse that counteracts the fear. It's just huge, and I'm feeling it like a tidal wave that's just starting to build. So this could take a few moments for this to build. It has a tremendous force of earth energy behind it. I'm literally feeling energy coming up through my feet right now that's feeding up into the heart area. So that's part of the story, is that earth is kind of helping us out here. So it's like we're kind of gaining the support of the armies of earth, all the Davic intelligence of earth coming forward to support this. And in the heart area, it's very beautiful, because what I'm feeling is something that feels very similar to the time in the fall and the spring, when we're in the Vedic calendar. We talk about the 9 days of Mother Divine, and that's when Mother Divine comes to earth or that very big level of divinity comes to earth to set things right and to heal everything. And it can also be a very dynamic time. It's often a time when there are more than the usual number of changes and transformations. So being aware, one of the things that's happening is I'm seeing meridians that run down the sides of the body are just anchoring, like stable. So for each one of us, we've got this earth energy coming up the feet. We've got the heart energy just starting to expand like a giant tidal wave of our collective. And then these anchors, these two anchors on either side of the physiology. Because it's like basically creating a wave of love that big could stir up things a little bit. So we want the anchor. I'm asking about the anchors because this is a collective healing. Can we anchor every living thing on earth? We want to anchor the trees. We want to anchor the bugs. We want to anchor that fly that just went by. We want to anchor everything, anchoring everything, anchoring the earth itself, offering the anchors, because that's what our bodies, see, that was our body's response to the earth energy. It was like, oh, well, in my body, I've got this ability, this capability to do this anchoring thing. So we offer that back to all the Davic intelligence of the earth, all the beings in the oceans, all the waters of the earth, the 5 elements of the earth, anchoring everything. It's the anchors are at the astral level of the field, astral field, because they're threads, right? The meridians are threads or streams of consciousness that run through the body. So it's creating over a whole earth. We are like a little, I'm thinking of like sometimes in chemistry, you know, you have a substance and you drop in a little something into that substance and then it causes the substance to reform itself. This anchoring effect that's going over the whole earth and creating a sort of naturally stable condition. So fear, of course, is a Vata imbalance, which is unstable. Vata being one of the 3 doshas, and Vata being the most moving of the 3 doshas. Kapha is more stable. So the web, that anchoring quality is in the entire web of the field around us, and it's literally added another layer of light to the earth, because we actually formed a new layer in the web of life. I've never seen that happen before, you guys. Incredible, it's incredible, it's incredible. We've created a new layer to the web of life, and this layer of the web of life has as its fundamental underlying energy signature that incredible love, that tidal wave of love, that tidal wave. And we're just letting that tidal wave now, with all the anchoring and all the structure, very, very orderly structure set up over the whole earth. Now the tidal wave of love emanates through our healing collective into that orderly structure. It's like a crystal or something, right? An impulse in one part, the whole crystal vibrates with it. And it's holding everything. It's holding every living thing, every precious living thing. It doesn't mean that life doesn't continue to change. Oh, hello, fly again. Just letting that flow through the system and restructure the heart areas of our physiologies so that we are capable of experiencing and expanding the potential, the power potential of our hearts in a way as never before. So upgrade for us as individuals too. And I'm seeing that being offered to our ancestors. The ancestors truly deserve, and they are the support system for the physicality of the body. So God bless them. And so that this upgrade for the heart area reflects into the entire physiology. Last couple webinars, we talked about how vital the heart is and how responsible it is for the healthy functioning of all parts of the physiology. But this is particularly going to help people who have problems with the circulatory system or heart, also with the kidneys, and then all the other systems that are nearby. I feel as if this was just a huge, huge healing. As I'm standing here talking, so much information is coming in. I can't really cover it all, and we do have more questions, so we're going to keep moving on. So a few people just saying thank you. How can we keep energy levels high? So one of the ways is we did a healing for that, is that connection between the role of each of the parts of the body to their divine source is stabilized with a matrix. So we did that just near the beginning of this session. So I think that stabilization of those matrices will definitely keep the energy levels in the body at a very exalted level. It should be overall very good. Of course, other like simple things, the 3 pillars, right? Sleep, exercise, and diet. You know, on a gross material level, of course, attending to those is going to help also with energy levels, always. Good sleep is so basic, right? And I should really stop here and do a healing for sleep, but I did a really big healing for sleep in the last webinar, so that one's up online free. Check it out if you need to get better rest. Do you have any insights on energy healing for telomeres, the ends of the chromosomes that help ensure proper cell division, and research to show that their length is directly tied to longevity and well-being? Yes, that is a really important area. We could look at those telomeres, and that also healing for, oh, okay. Okay. So that actually is our last question in this question section. Very good, beautiful, in that question section. So yeah, for telomeres, this will also help anybody who's got any concerns about unhealthy reproduction of cells, as in cancer. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our skill that we created yesterday, right, of focusing the attention down to a small, fine level of the physiology. We want to look at, we want to get down to the cells, and then the subcellular structures, and then the molecular structure. We want to get into the DNA of the cells and into the molecules of the DNA, and then look at the very end cap of the DNAs. That's where the telomeres are. Okay. So 1 or 2 webinars ago, I think it might have been the last set, I talked about area of creation that's responsible for structuring. So, and when I talked about that, I talked about in the context of the causal field, because the causal field it's this big kind of ocean-like, fine feeling level of self. And each one of us tends to divide that causal field up in our own unique ways. And those divisions are reflected in the positioning of the planets when we're born. Just saying. Because the planets, they sit in different signs and different houses. And so those signs and those houses and the positions of the particular type of intelligence that's in that particular house, these are all expressions of the way each of us divides up the causal area of our being differently. That said, there is an area for structuring, and it is universal. And there are certain, I would say, archetypal or universal forms in the causal field, which are accessible to everyone. If you know they're there, then you can direct your attention into those areas. There's this area specifically for structuring, and in that area specifically for structuring, all the information for blueprints and templates, ideal blueprint for the physiology. The information for the telomeres is there. So all we have to do is connect. We need to draw the thread of consciousness that connects from the ends of the DNA strands through the whole physiology to that area of nature's functioning. This is a Devic level of nature's functioning. So the devas of the physiology can do it. The devas are intelligent structures in that causal level of the physiology. The devas physiologies are primarily at the causal level, and I'm talking small packets of information inside the physiology. Those packets of information that were responsible for the original formation of the body. So those Devic structures were responsible for the way the DNA split itself up and restructured itself when your body was being formed in the first place. They have access to the telomeres, and also the forms of intelligence in this area of the causal field, which is for structuring, also Devic structures. So they're all cousins and friends and family. Now, right now, we're looking at them in terms of beings. As you know, in the past, I've said there are 3 different ways we can look at the intelligence in the causal realm. One is as beings. And this is a good way to look at it right now, because it helps. Because as beings, there's a relationship. When we're talking beings, we're talking like my friends and my family, my structure. So this wave of lovingness, this ability in our heart. This had to happen before this could happen, right? This deeper, more profound, more extensive capacity of the heart is able to leverage the nature of the relationship between the devas who are responsible for the formation of the DNA and the devas who are responsible for the structuring levels of creation. So as the heart becomes more powerful, its discernment becomes more refined. So we're looking at a very, very delicate relationship. Very exceedingly delicate, exceedingly tender, exceedingly sweet, like a tiny newborn infant sweet. This is the relationship between the intelligence responsible for the formation of the telomeres and the intelligence in the structuring level of creation that has the blueprint that can communicate to our physiologies how to stabilize the health of the telomeres in the molecules so that they are never, how can we say this? So the telomeres are ever aligned with their highest potential. The telomeres are ever aligned with their truest form. True form, truth. It was fun yesterday talking about truth. I loved it. You can look at that part of the webinar. So lovely, so beloved, so wonderful. We're just feeling that in the whole body at the molecular level. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That energy is healing. I feel a little bit of warmth in the body associated with the transformation taking place in the telomeres. And I feel as if that's normal for that to happen right now, and that the body temperatures will rebalance. They'll balance again, but it just has to be for a temporary moment as the transformation is occurring. Thank you. And any cooling that come in. The cooling coming in through the physiology to the telomeres is helping to bring in the wisdom to the telomeres in the form of knowledge. The knowledge is coming in and that heats it up. And so then the cooling comes in. And the knowledge also blesses the waters of the body, which also helps the pineal gland. Good job, everybody. I've still got several questions I didn't address. So many, actually quite a number. So what I told my husband I'd like to do, because I kind of had a feeling this would happen, we've come to our hour. What I'd like to do is, after we finish today, later today, when we still have our setup, I will just do another kind of like webinar, and I'll just address the rest of the questions, and we'll send it to everybody. As when we send these webinar links out to everyone, we'll send you that one too, as a kind of like a bonus webinar with everybody else's questions, because it's really important. I mean, every single question that came in is absolutely precious and vital. And I love you all dearly, and I want to honor your questions, and I really appreciate that people were so enthusiastic about this question and answer webinar, that so many questions came in. That was beautiful. It was powerful. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for so many people continuing also to join these webinars. We're reaching record highs right now in the webinars, and we appreciate it very much. I appreciate very much the opportunity to be able to share this information with everyone. So may the work that we did today bless the world, and may the work we did for the pineal glands hopefully go up online and be a valuable addition to the other videos that other people have posted on the pineal gland that, you know, give dietary recommendations and such. Thank you all very much for being with me. Thank you for the amazing, groundbreaking work that we're doing together. I literally don't have words for what that means to me. It's incredible. It's just incredible. I'm going to close the webinar now. I look forward to seeing you guys again in about 3 weeks. That's when the next one will be. Thank you. Goodbye.